the first signs of something extraordinary began quietly, almost unnoticed. High above Earth, satellites were scanning the vast expanse of space as they always did, monitoring stars, galaxies, and distant signals that crossed the cosmic ocean. Most of the signals were ordinary natural bursts of energy, the faint hum of distant pulsars, or background cosmic noise that scientists had learned to ignore. But one day, something unusual appeared. It was faint at first, almost too small to detect, like a whisper in the middle of a storm. Yet, there was a rhythm to it, a deliberate pattern that could not be explained by any known celestial phenomena. The signal was being transmitted from a star system far beyond anything humans had visited. From a place where no human had ever been, Dr. Ayesha Khan was the first to notice it. She was a brilliant astrophysicist working in a research center that specialized in deep space observation. Ayesha had always been curious, the kind of scientist who did not just look at data but listened to it. Something about this particular signal felt alive, intentional, and urgent. When she ran the analysis, she discovered that it contained repeating sequences, almost like a language, though she could not understand the meaning immediately. The data was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. To her trained eyes, it was clear, this was not just random noise. This was a call for help. Ayesha spent long nights in the lab, running simulations, testing theories, and cross-referencing every known natural phenomenon that could produce similar signals. She worked tirelessly, fueled by curiosity, a sense of duty, and an unshakable feeling that this could be humanity's first contact with intelligent life. Every calculation confirmed her suspicion. The signal was artificial. It had been sent deliberately. But why, and why now? Questions raced through her mind as she studied the data, and slowly, the realization began to form. Someone or something out there was reaching out, asking for help. At first, she approached her colleagues with cautious excitement. She expected skepticism, but she did not expect disbelief so strong that some laughed outright. Many scientists argued that it must be a misinterpretation, a glitch in the instruments, or a cosmic anomaly that humans could not yet understand. Government officials and space authorities were even more cautious. They warned against jumping to conclusions, fearing the consequences of announcing contact with extraterrestrial intelligence before being certain. The world seemed to move slowly, weighed down by doubt and fear, while the signal persisted, as if patiently waiting for humans to pay attention. Meanwhile, outside the labs and research centers, the story began to leak to the public. Amateur astronomers, students, and hobbyists picked up the signals independently and began posting about them online. Social media erupted with speculation, excitement, and theories. Some claimed it was proof of aliens, while others insisted it was a hoax. Yet, despite the confusion and the controversy, something remarkable was happening. Ordinary people, who had never held positions of power or influence, were coming together to observe, study, and debate. They were fascinated, inspired, and, in many cases, afraid. Humanity was collectively realizing that there might be other intelligent life in the universe, life that could communicate and perhaps needed help. For Ayesha, the pressure was immense. She knew that if she was correct, this signal represented a turning point for humanity. It was a chance to witness history and perhaps even save lives light years away. But it was also a challenge. How could she convince the world that what she had discovered was real? How could she prepare humans, who had only ever known their own planet, for a responsibility that stretched across the stars? As she worked tirelessly, she found herself caught between excitement and fear. Every moment spent decoding the signal brought her closer to understanding the aliens' message, but also closer to the realization of how fragile humanity's response could be. While scientists debated and governments hesitated, life on Earth continued. People went about their daily routines, largely unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding far above them. Yet, for some, the signal ignited a spark of wonder that could not be ignored. Students stayed up late to watch the skies, hoping to glimpse something extraordinary. Amateur astronomers set up telescopes on rooftops and in fields, scanning for clues. Families discussed the possibility of intelligent life over dinner, and strangers argued online about the implications of what might be humanity's first contact. The world was slowly waking up to the reality that they were not alone and that someone, somewhere, was reaching out for help. Ayesha herself felt the weight of this awakening. She realized that this was more than a scientific discovery. It was a test of humanity's character. Would humans rise to the occasion, or would fear and doubt paralyze them? She shared her findings cautiously at first, presenting data to scientific panels, conferences, and online forums. Gradually, as more experts analyzed the signal and confirmed its patterns, disbelief began to give way to cautious acceptance. The signal's urgency became apparent. It was not merely an attempt at contact, it was a plea for survival. As news spread, emotions ran high. Scientists marveled at the sophistication of the communication, while the public imagined what these beings might look like, how they lived, and why they needed help. The idea that Earth could play a role in the fate of an alien civilization was both thrilling and terrifying. Ayesha, despite her exhaustion, could not help but feel a deep sense of purpose. She knew that the next steps would require unprecedented cooperation, innovation, and courage. Humanity was being called upon to act, and how it responded would define its place in the universe. Before any action was taken, there was also a sense of hope. Hope that humans could rise above fear, politics, and doubt. Hope that ordinary people, scientists and leaders could work together to do something truly extraordinary. And while the alien civilization remained far away, silent except for its urgent signal, humanity was beginning to stir, realizing that it had been given a glimpse of something far greater than itself. The world was on the cusp of an awakening, and it all began with a faint, mysterious signal from the stars, a call for help that no one could ignore once it was understood. This was the stage where everything was uncertain, yet full of potential. Humans had been given a chance to show courage, intelligence, and empathy. And as Aisha stared at the data on her screen, late into the night, she knew that the story of humanity's first real encounter with the cosmos was just beginning. The signal continued to pulse across the void, waiting, hoping for humanity to respond, and in that quiet moment, the world collectively held its breath. The urgency of the alien signal became impossible to ignore. As scientists like Dr. Ayesha Khan continued to analyze the transmissions, a clearer picture emerged. The signals were no longer just patterns of data, they were messages, carefully encoded and full of meaning. Ayesha realized that the aliens were in real danger. Something catastrophic was happening on their planet. Something that could destroy their civilization if help did not arrive quickly. The problem was vast, almost incomprehensible. Humans had never faced anything like this before. No country, no organization, no government had ever dealt with a crisis that stretched across the stars. Yet, the evidence was undeniable. Lives hung in the balance, and humanity was the only hope for these distant beings. When this news started to circulate among global scientific communities, reactions were mixed. Some scientists were exhilarated, seeing a chance to make history. Others were skeptical, afraid that humans were misinterpreting data or falling prey to a cosmic illusion. The idea that an alien civilization might be at risk sounded like science fiction, yet the signals themselves were real, persistent, and increasingly urgent. Meetings were called at research institutions, debates erupted in scientific journals, and emails flooded government offices. Aisha and her team worked day and night to translate the alien language, to understand the nature of the danger, and to find ways to respond. Meanwhile, the world outside the labs began to take notice. News of the discovery leaked to the public, initially in small reports in newspapers and online forums, and soon it became impossible to ignore. Social media exploded with speculation. People posted about the signals, shared videos of telescope footage, and debated whether humanity should intervene. Some dismissed it as a hoax or a prank. Others were deeply moved, imagining a civilization far away, struggling for survival, sending out a desperate plea to the unknown. Ordinary citizens, from students to office workers, were drawn into the story. They stayed up late watching the skies, tracking every update, and discussing what should be done. It was as if humanity had suddenly become aware that the universe was bigger and more alive than anyone had imagined. As the signals became more comprehensible, the nature of the aliens' peril became terrifyingly clear. Their planet was experiencing catastrophic environmental collapse, storms far larger than anything humans had ever seen, violent seismic activity, and atmospheric changes that threatened the very survival of their species. Every message was laced with desperation, pleading for help that only humans could provide. The aliens explained their situation with precision, including coordinates, resources, and instructions. Yet the challenge was immense. Humans had never reached another star system, had never directly intervened in the affairs of an alien world, and had limited knowledge of technologies that could cross such distances. The problem was not just scientific, it was moral, logistical, and political. Governments were slow to act. Many leaders were afraid of the unknown, concerned that responding could be risky. What if the aliens were hostile? What if interference caused greater harm? International committees debated endlessly, creating reports and plans that often went nowhere. Bureaucracy and fear slowed decisions. Meanwhile, the signal continued, its urgency growing with each passing day. Ordinary citizens, frustrated by the inaction of authorities, began to take matters into their own hands. Amateur scientists, engineers, and technology enthusiasts formed online groups, brainstorming ways to assist. They shared ideas, built prototypes, and discussed strategies for sending aid. The situation that began as a distant curiosity was now becoming a collective, human mission. In this atmosphere of tension and excitement, Dr. Aisha Khan emerged as a leader. She became the bridge between the alien civilization and humanity, the person who could interpret the signals, explain the urgency, and inspire action. She gave interviews, wrote articles, and spoke at conferences, trying to convince governments and private organizations that help had to be sent immediately. She faced skepticism and sometimes outright hostility. Many accused her of exaggerating the threat or wasting resources on a fantasy. But Aisha's persistence paid off. Slowly, her message resonated with those who had the means and knowledge to act. Humanity's attention was shifting from curiosity to responsibility. Social media and news coverage played a huge role in this transformation. Ordinary people were no longer passive observers. They became vocal advocates. Hashtags demanding action began trending. Videos went viral, showing animations of the alien planet, visualizing the danger and explaining the consequences if humans did nothing. The world began to unite in concern, realizing that the choice to help or ignore the aliens would define humanity's character. Even those who had once dismissed the signals as nonsense began to feel the weight of responsibility. The story of a distant civilization in peril had become a global concern. At the same time, technology started to accelerate the response. Universities, private companies, and amateur engineers experimented with ways to communicate more effectively with the aliens. Satellites were repurposed to send data and instructions. Signals were sent back, confirming that humans were listening and trying to help. Although the technology was crude compared to the aliens' own capabilities, it was enough to demonstrate goodwill and begin a dialogue. Every successful transmission sparked hope, while every failed attempt reminded humanity of the enormous challenge ahead. The balance between hope and fear became the driving force for both scientists and ordinary citizens alike. Amidst this chaos and excitement, human stories began to emerge. A group of students in a small town built a makeshift radio array in their schoolyard, tracking the alien signals each night. An engineer in a remote city stayed up for days, devising a way to amplify transmissions to reach farther into space. Families shared the news with children, teaching them to care about life beyond Earth. Even people with no scientific background felt a connection to the aliens' plight. Humanity, once divided by borders and politics, was beginning to unite around a common cause. It was an unprecedented moment of shared curiosity, empathy, and determination. Despite the excitement, fear remained. Some worried that helping could provoke the aliens accidentally or expose Earth to unknown dangers. Others feared that humanity was not ready for such responsibility, that pride or mistakes could doom both species. Scientists debated, governments hesitated, and citizens waited. The tension was palpable. Every day that passed without concrete action felt like a countdown, a reminder that the alien survival depended on humans acting wisely and quickly. Aisha and her team worked tirelessly, aware that the fate of another civilization rested on their shoulders. Humanity had changed. Even before taking direct action, people were thinking beyond Earth, imagining the consequences of interstellar responsibility. They were learning to work together, to innovate under pressure, and to empathize with beings they had never seen. The alien signal had become more than a scientific puzzle. It had become a test of human character. Could humanity rise to the occasion? Could humans, who had only just begun to explore their own planet fully, respond effectively to a crisis in a distant star system? The answer remained uncertain, but hope and determination were spreading. And through it all, the signal continued to pulse across the cosmos, steady and insistent, a silent reminder that time was not on the aliens' side. Every scientist, engineer, student, and ordinary citizen who looked up at the night sky felt the same question. Would humanity surprise everyone by stepping up when it mattered most? That question, filled with fear and anticipation, hung over the world like a beacon. It was the moment when curiosity became responsibility, when wonder transformed into action, and when ordinary people began to imagine themselves as heroes in a story larger than anything they had ever known. After weeks of urgent analysis, debate, and planning, humanity finally began to take action. What had started as a faint signal in the void of space had grown into a global mission, uniting scientists, engineers, and ordinary people in a way no one had ever seen before. Governments were still cautious, wary of risks and unknown consequences, but private organizations, universities, and even hobbyist groups refused to wait. They knew that if they hesitated too long, the alien civilization could be lost forever. The world was moving from curiosity and fear into determination, and for the first time, humans were beginning to believe that they could make a real difference. Dr. Aisha Khan became the central figure in this unprecedented effort. She coordinated between teams, shared translations of the alien messages, and helped devise strategies that could realistically aid a civilization light years away. Every message from the aliens carried not only technical instructions but also an emotional plea, filled with urgency and hope. They described how violent storms and planetary instability were threatening to wipe out entire cities, how ecosystems were collapsing, and how their most vulnerable populations, the elderly and sick, were at the greatest risk. The words were simple in translation, yet the weight of their meaning was profound. Humanity now understood that this was not an abstract puzzle or a distant curiosity. It was a life-and-death crisis. At first, the technical challenges seemed insurmountable. Humans had never tried to directly aid a planet in another star system. Even sending simple instructions across such immense distances was difficult. Satellites and radio signals could carry data, but they traveled at the speed of light, meaning messages took years to arrive. Engineers and scientists had to invent new techniques to compress data, ensure accuracy, and transmit critical information without losing vital details. Every calculation was painstaking. Every transmission tested multiple times before it was considered reliable. Mistakes could cost lives on a scale that humans had never before confronted. The pressure was immense, yet the determination to succeed only grew stronger. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens continued to play a remarkable role. The mission was no longer limited to labs and research centers. Online communities shared ideas about how to optimize transmissions, how to adapt human technology to alien conditions, and even how to build tools and software that could assist remotely. Amateur engineers built small satellite prototypes and sent them into orbit, hoping to supplement the limited capacity of government satellites. Students created algorithms to decode alien signals faster, and communities raised funds to support the scientists and volunteers who were working around the clock. It was a moment of collective ingenuity, where thousands of small contributions came together to form something truly extraordinary. Despite the determination, the path was not smooth. Initial attempts to transmit stabilizing instructions and resources failed repeatedly. Some signals were lost due to interference, while others were misinterpreted by the aliens, leading to confusion and setbacks. For every step forward, there seemed to be 2 steps back. The frustration grew, and doubt crept into even the most confident minds. People began to wonder whether humans were truly capable of meeting the challenge. Could a species so young, untested beyond its own planet, actually save another civilization? The aliens' fate hung in the balance, and the world watched anxiously as solutions were tested, discarded, and reimagined. In the midst of these trials, moments of ingenuity and inspiration emerged. A group of engineers discovered a way to modify existing satellites to carry more precise and faster transmissions. Software developers created real-time simulation programs to predict the alien planet's environmental changes and guide human interventions. Even ordinary people contributed with innovative ideas, suggesting ways to improve communication, optimize energy usage, and reduce error rates. Slowly, the seemingly impossible began to feel possible. Humans were proving that creativity, determination, and teamwork could overcome limitations that once seemed insurmountable. The mission began to gain momentum, and small successes started to appear. The aliens responded with gratitude, signaling that they had understood the transmissions and were able to implement some of the instructions. For the first time, it seemed like the alien civilization might survive the immediate dangers. Every successful transmission, every corrected error, and every technological innovation was celebrated around the world. News channels ran stories highlighting the contributions of ordinary citizens alongside scientists and engineers, emphasizing that humanity's strength lay in collective effort. People began to feel a shared pride, a sense of purpose that transcended borders, politics, and personal concerns. Yet the stakes remained incredibly high. Every message carried an emotional weight, reminding humans that failure was not an option. The aliens' descriptions of their suffering were vivid and heartrending. They spoke of cities buried under storms, families trapped in collapsing landscapes, and communities facing famine and disease. For Aisha and her team, each transmission was a reminder that their work had real consequences. The effort was exhausting, with sleepless nights and relentless problem-solving. But the emotional drive kept everyone going. Humanity was no longer just observing. It had become a lifeline, the thin thread connecting survival and hope across unimaginable distances. Collaboration reached unprecedented levels. Scientists who had once competed for recognition now shared data freely. Engineers from different countries worked together on joint projects. Students collaborated with professionals to test algorithms and models. Ordinary citizens contributed ideas and resources. Humanity, for the first time, experienced a mission that required the full strength of its intelligence, creativity, and compassion. The world was learning what it meant to unite under a shared goal that transcended national borders and personal ambitions. As the missions progressed, humans discovered something unexpected. The alien civilization, though technologically advanced in its own way, had limitations that made even simple guidance from humans invaluable. They were surprised by human ingenuity, improvisation, and the ability to adapt technology quickly. Messages of thanks began to arrive, expressing astonishment that a species so young and untested could respond so effectively. Humanity had not only saved lives but had begun to earn the respect of a civilization far older and more advanced than itself. It was a moment of revelation. Humans were capable of extraordinary things when they acted with courage, intelligence, and empathy. The world had begun to realize the full scale of what had been achieved. The alien civilization was no longer on the brink of immediate destruction. Humanity had proven that it could act decisively and creatively in the face of unprecedented challenges. Scientists, engineers, students, and ordinary citizens had come together in ways that history had never seen before. And while the mission was far from over, the initial success was a testament to the power of collaboration, determination, and hope. Humanity had transformed from passive observers into active participants, stepping onto a stage that extended across the stars. Even as relief settled over those involved, the work was far from finished. The alien planet still faced enormous challenges, and every human action had to be carefully considered. But the breakthrough demonstrated that humans were capable of responding to extraordinary circumstances, not through wealth, power, or force, but through ingenuity, empathy, and persistence. Humanity had begun to realize that it could surprise even the most advanced civilizations with its resilience, creativity, and willingness to act when it mattered most. In these early successes, the message was clear. Humans could rise to challenges that no one had thought possible. The aliens were still in danger, but the path to saving them had begun. Every transmission sent, every technological solution applied, and every collaborative effort made had turned a moment of desperation into a moment of hope. Humanity, once seen as a small, inexperienced species on a minor planet, was now demonstrating a capacity for heroism that could reach across light. And for the first time, people around the world began to feel a profound sense of pride not in a single leader or nation, but in themselves, in humanity as a whole. After months of tireless effort, humanity began to see the fruits of its work. The alien civilization, which had been teetering on the edge of disaster, slowly stabilized. The transmissions from Earth had allowed them to implement crucial changes on their planet, preventing immediate catastrophe. The violent storms that had been tearing across their cities began to subside, though the environment remained fragile. Entire communities that had faced destruction were now safe, and for the first time in weeks, the aliens were able to breathe a little easier. For Dr. Aisha Khan and her team, this was a moment of profound relief. The countless sleepless nights, the endless problem-solving, and the uncertainty had all led to this tangible success. Humanity, despite its inexperience and distance, had made a real difference. As news of the progress reached the aliens, their responses were filled with emotion. Their messages were no longer just technical instructions or desperate pleas, they were expressions of gratitude, astonishment, and admiration. The aliens had never imagined that a younger, less advanced species could rise to such a challenge. They sent detailed reports describing how human solutions had helped stabilize their cities, prevent ecological collapse, and protect vulnerable populations. It was clear that humans had earned something far beyond respect. They had earned trust. The aliens' reactions brought tears to the eyes of many scientists who had been working day and night to ensure success. Humanity had proven, in a tangible way, that it was capable of empathy, intelligence, and decisive action. The impact on Earth was equally profound. Media outlets around the world began highlighting the extraordinary efforts of ordinary people alongside scientists and engineers. Stories emerged of students in remote villages decoding alien signals, hobbyist engineers creating innovative transmission devices, and volunteers who had spent days tracking planetary data. Families celebrated the contributions of their children, while universities and organizations honored those who had risked everything to help a distant civilization. It was a moment when humanity collectively recognized its own potential. People realized that heroism was not limited to soldiers or politicians. It could be found in laboratories, classrooms, and even living rooms. Emotions ran high across the globe. People were inspired, awed, and humbled by the fact that humans had played a critical role in saving a civilization light years away. Public discussions shifted from disbelief to pride. Governments that had been slow to act were forced to acknowledge the success of independent efforts, and some even sought to support further collaboration. The sense of collective achievement was unlike anything humanity had experienced before. Social media platforms were filled with messages celebrating teamwork, perseverance, and ingenuity. People felt a renewed connection not only to the wider human community, but also to the universe itself. Despite the celebrations, the challenges were not completely over. The alien planet was still fragile, and their recovery would take time. Humans continued to send guidance, advice, and technical support to help them rebuild. Scientists monitored the planet closely, ensuring that interventions were effective and that the aliens had the tools to sustain themselves independently. Each transmission was carefully crafted, balancing immediate solutions with long-term strategies. It was a delicate operation, one that required patience, foresight, and precision. Humanity had moved from reacting to a crisis to guiding recovery, demonstrating an unprecedented level of responsibility and foresight. The emotional impact on humans was immense. For Aisha, the relief was tinged with awe and humility. She realized that this mission had changed humanity forever. Ordinary citizens felt the same way. People who had once felt powerless now understood that they could contribute meaningfully to challenges that seemed impossible. Stories circulated of children staying up all night to watch the skies, engineers solving problems in unexpected ways, and entire communities coming together to support the mission. Each individual effort had played a part in saving lives on another world, and that realization filled people with pride and wonder. The aliens themselves began to share more about their culture, history, and experiences. They expressed amazement at the creativity and compassion humans had shown, comparing it to their own long-developed civilizations. They sent images, symbols, and messages explaining how humanity's interventions had changed the course of events. These exchanges created a profound sense of connection, bridging the vast distance between two species. Humans began to see the aliens not as distant beings or abstract data points, but as living civilizations with hopes, fears, and lives similar to their own. It was a lesson in empathy on a cosmic scale. Meanwhile, ordinary humans began to reflect on what had been achieved. Teachers used the story as a way to inspire students about the power of curiosity, teamwork, and perseverance. Writers, artists, and storytellers began to capture the events, sharing the narrative of human ingenuity with the world. Across nations, the story became a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when united by a common purpose. People recognized that their collective creativity, compassion, and determination had made the impossible possible. Humanity had not only saved lives but had also reshaped its own identity in the process. The mission also created new scientific knowledge. Humans had learned more about interstellar communication, planetary science, and emergency response than ever before. Every experiment, every trial and error, and every small innovation added to humanity's collective understanding. It was knowledge born from necessity, driven by compassion and responsibility. Scientists and engineers began to realize that these lessons would have far-reaching consequences, not just for future interstellar missions but for understanding and improving life on Earth as well. Perhaps the most profound effect was the recognition of human potential. For centuries, people had wondered what humanity was capable of. This mission had provided a clear answer. Humans could rise to challenges beyond their imagination. They could collaborate across cultures, borders, and disciplines to achieve goals once thought impossible. They could act with empathy and intelligence on a scale that no one had predicted. And perhaps most importantly, they could inspire each other to reach higher, think bigger, and care more deeply. Humanity's efforts had surprised not only the alien civilization but also humans themselves. The alien civilization was stable and recovering. Life was returning to their cities, and their environment, though still fragile, was on a path to regeneration. Humans continued to support them, offering advice and guidance, but the immediate crisis had passed. The gratitude of the aliens was profound and heartfelt. They had witnessed firsthand the courage, creativity, and compassion of an unexpected species, and they could not hide their amazement. Humanity had proven itself worthy of attention and trust on a cosmic scale, a milestone that would resonate for generations. In the aftermath, humanity reflected on the meaning of these events. The story of a distant civilization in peril and the humans who answered its call became a symbol of hope, empathy, and unity. It was a reminder that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when they acted together. The lessons were clear. Curiosity, courage, and compassion could overcome fear, doubt, and inexperience. Humanity had learned that it was capable of far more than it had ever imagined, and that when challenged it could rise to the occasion with creativity, intelligence, and heart. And in this quiet reflection, as the world absorbed the magnitude of what had been accomplished, one truth became undeniable. Humans had surprised everyone. They had turned a cosmic emergency into a story of triumph. They had reached across the stars to save lives, not for glory or reward, but because they could, because it was the right thing to do. And as humanity looked toward the future, it did so with the knowledge that no challenge, no matter how vast, distant, or unprecedented, was beyond its reach. The first test had been met, and it had revealed the true potential of a united, determined, and compassionate species. After the immediate crisis had passed and the alien civilization had stabilized, humanity began to reflect on what had been achieved. The story of their intervention spread quickly across the globe, capturing the imagination of people everywhere. Scientists, engineers, students, and ordinary citizens who had contributed in any way were celebrated not only as heroes but as symbols of human potential. For centuries, humans had wondered about their place in the universe, questioning whether they could rise to challenges beyond Earth. Now, the answer was clear. They could. The message was simple but profound. When humans acted together, with intelligence, courage, and compassion, they could achieve the impossible. The aliens, though still recovering from the disasters that had threatened their world, began to communicate more openly with humans. Their messages were filled with gratitude, wonder, and curiosity. They shared glimpses of their culture, art, history, and way of life, fascinated by the creativity and empathy that humanity had demonstrated. For the first time, humans realized that they were not only saving lives but also forging a connection with another intelligent species. It was a humbling experience. Humans, who had often felt small and insignificant on their own planet, were now part of a larger cosmic story. The realization that their actions had consequences far beyond Earth filled people with awe and a renewed sense of responsibility. On Earth, the sense of pride and accomplishment was tangible. Media outlets ran stories about the contributions of ordinary people alongside scientists and engineers. Children who had stayed up late decoding signals were recognized in classrooms and on news programs. Engineers who had improvised critical technology were honored at universities and conferences. Entire communities celebrated the idea that they had played a role in saving a civilization light years away. It was a collective achievement unlike any other in human history, a reminder that heroism and ingenuity could be found in unexpected places, not just in leaders or governments. The story also sparked a new wave of interest in science, technology, and space exploration. Students dreamed of becoming astrophysicists, engineers, or programmers capable of contributing to future missions. Universities introduced new programs designed to teach interstellar communication, problem-solving, and collaboration on a global scale. The event had transformed curiosity into action, inspiring young people to imagine careers that could help humanity reach further and do more. Even adults found themselves thinking differently about their abilities and potential. The realization that humans could save a civilization had instilled a collective confidence that transcended borders, politics, and personal limitations. While pride and excitement were widespread, there was also a deep reflection on humanity's responsibilities. People understood that with the ability to impact distant civilizations came ethical obligations. How should humans act in the future when faced with similar challenges? What were the limits of intervention, and how could they ensure that their actions were guided by empathy, intelligence, and careful judgment? These questions became central to discussions among scientists, policymakers, and educators. Humanity had succeeded, but the experience also reminded everyone that power, knowledge, and ingenuity came with great responsibility. The emotional impact on individuals was profound. Dr. Aisha Khan, who had spent countless nights decoding signals and coordinating efforts, felt a mix of relief, pride, and humility. She realized that the mission had not only saved lives but had also transformed her understanding of human potential. Engineers, students, and volunteers expressed similar emotions. Ordinary people who had contributed in small but meaningful ways found themselves part of a story larger than their own lives. They had experienced the extraordinary, and in doing so, they had discovered that humans could rise to challenges that once seemed unimaginable. Even governments and institutions, which had been slow to act at first, began to recognize the lessons learned. They saw the importance of collaboration, innovation, and trusting human ingenuity outside traditional hierarchies. International organizations began to explore frameworks for future interstellar collaboration. Inspired by the success of ordinary people working together, the event had demonstrated that humanity could act decisively when united by a common purpose, and that the collective intelligence and compassion of ordinary people could be more effective than bureaucracy alone. The alien civilization, having recovered from the immediate danger, we began to engage in more detailed exchanges with humans. They shared technology, knowledge, and insights about their own survival strategies. Humans, in turn, offered ideas, guidance, and friendship. What began as a rescue mission evolved into a genuine relationship between species. Humans were learning about the universe not only through observation but also through direct, meaningful interaction. The connection created a sense of responsibility, as humans realized that their actions could influence life on other worlds, for better or worse. For the wider human population, the experience became a story of hope and inspiration. It was proof that even in the face of enormous challenges, humanity could act with intelligence, creativity, and compassion. Ordinary people realized that their ideas, efforts, and actions mattered. Young students were inspired to dream bigger. Scientists and engineers felt renewed motivation, and communities found pride in working together. The story was a reminder that heroism was not only about extraordinary individuals, it was about collective effort, shared responsibility, and the willingness to act when it truly mattered. The success of the mission also reshaped humanity's self-image. For centuries, humans had wondered whether they were alone, small, and insignificant in the vast universe. This event provided a clear answer. Humans were capable of extraordinary things. They could communicate across unimaginable distances, solve complex problems under pressure, and act with empathy and courage. Humanity had surprised not only the alien civilization but also itself. People everywhere felt a new sense of possibility, a belief that no challenge, no matter how vast, was beyond their reach if approached with intelligence, creativity, and determination. In the aftermath, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens continued to innovate and explore. Universities, research centers, and private organizations expanded their programs in astrophysics, interstellar communication, and planetary sciences. Young people, inspired by the story, pursued careers in science and technology. Humanity had learned practical skills that could help not only distant civilizations but also life on Earth. From environmental management to disaster response, the lessons of collaboration, creativity, and empathy had become part of human culture, embedded in education, media, and collective consciousness. Ultimately, the story ended on a note of hope, pride, and readiness for the future. Humans had acted when it mattered most. They had saved lives, proven their capability, and forged connections across the stars. The aliens were safe, the immediate crisis was over, and humanity had grown in ways that went far beyond scientific achievement. The event became a symbol of what humans could accomplish when united by purpose, intelligence, and compassion. It was a reminder that even a species still young in the cosmic timeline could make a profound difference, not through force or power, but through creativity, courage, and empathy. In the quiet that followed, as people looked up at the stars, there was a new sense of belonging and possibility. Humanity had proven itself capable, resilient, and compassionate. They had learned that ordinary individuals, working together, could achieve extraordinary feats. The aliens had survived, yes, but humanity had grown as well. They had discovered what it meant to rise to the challenge, to act wisely, and to care deeply not just for themselves, but for life beyond their planet. And in that realization, humans found a profound and lasting sense of pride, purpose, and hope. The story of humanity's first real interstellar intervention became a tale passed down for generations, inspiring people to dream bigger, think wider, and act with courage and compassion. It reminded the world that heroism was not measured by wealth, power, or authority, but by determination, empathy, and intelligence applied at the right moment. The lesson was clear: when humans unite, they can surprise not only the universe but themselves, achieving feats that once seemed impossible. And as humanity looked forward to the stars, they did so with confidence, knowing that the potential to rise, to save, and to inspire was already within them.